All right, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining for the second installment of our Culture for Change preview series. This time we're talking to leaders across the country, Detroit, DC, St. Louis, and New York, to hear about how not only how they're surviving, but thriving while working remotely. From developing a flexible schedule to maximizing productivity, our panel will provide helpful tips for working remote that will be insightful for individuals as well as teams. Best of all, many of these strategies and tools can be utilized beyond COVID and create more effective and efficient workplaces, whether working from home or a physical office setting. And make sure to save the date for the Culture for Change conference, which will be July 13th to July 16th. This 4-day experience will connect participants across sector to learn best practices around leadership and management, innovative approaches and real-life scenarios of managing a team. Second, cultivating an equitable, inclusive, and positive workplace environment. And third, personal leadership development that's integral to any individual. So before we hop right in, I just want to go over a few norms. So first, pets and kids are welcome to listen in. Second, let's differentiate between the chat and the Q&A. So chat is the perfect place for reactions, notes, quotes, anything wonderful you want to share. And then Q&A is where you'll put your questions that'll be answered during the audience Q&A towards the end. Make sure your message is heard. So when sending a message to the chat, make sure it says all panelists or attendees, or you may end up talking to just the panelists, or you might talk to another person, or you may end up just talking to yourself. And then be engaged. Again, hop in the chat, drop some reactions, drop some your own personal tips. And if you're on social media, be sure to tag strategic community partners. So I'm today's moderator, Alyssa Williams. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I attended Michigan State University for undergrad and Eastern Michigan for my master's degree. And I currently work at Strategic Community Partners as our Education and Community Initiatives Fellow. Ooh, long title, right? But I'm also finishing up my time as a Challenge Detroit Fellow. And I'm very excited to introduce our illustrious panel. I'd like to have each panelist take about 2 minutes to introduce themselves, their background, what their current organization, and their favorite part of working from home. So let's kick it off with Adam.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm just setting a timer to make sure I don't go over my 2 minutes. But my name is Adam Lane. I was born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. And as you can see there, one of my passions and something that I lead is the Young Griot Society. And what that is, it's an education nonprofit program specifically geared toward increasing youth literacy through creative writing. So we work with youth, late middle school, early high school is when they can enter the program. And then we have an entire curriculum designed to increase their writing proficiency, but at the same time, increase their ability to see themselves, see the world, and be change agents in the world as well. A little bit more background. So like I said, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, I've been working in education since I left undergrad here in St. Louis. So I started as a high school math teacher. And after 3 years in the classroom, went on to work in an education access and support nonprofit, working on getting students in the city of St. Louis prepared for and into the best high schools, and then on to four-year colleges and universities with support and financing to persist. Went on to lead that organization afterwards and stayed there I think it was about 4 years. And then in 2018, branched off, did my own thing, did some consulting, and just this past year launched, or I guess 2019 launched the Young Griot Society. And working with students, this has COVID-19 has definitely put a wrench in that momentum, but just not let it stop me. And then I also recently started at the St. Louis Treasurer's Office not too long ago. So a little bit more about me, and hopefully I can share more as the questions come along later. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. All right, we're going to shoot over to Brittany.
Hi, everyone. I'm also going to set a 2-minute timer. I like that. Thank you, Adam. Happy Wednesday. I am located in New York City. I've been in New York for the last 5 years, and during this time of quarantine, I'm a youth worker. I received my master's degree from Columbia University in social work and studied for my bachelor's in social work from the University of Pittsburgh. I currently work at the Brotherhood Sisters Soul, which is a youth development nonprofit where we serve 8 to 22-year-olds in the Harlem community and nearby boroughs of New York City. We do a number of different programming opportunities and after school programs for young people throughout the city, and really just think of ways that we can provide mentorship, love, and true guidance to young people through the different programmings that we offer. And this time has definitely tested a lot of the ways that we continue to host programming, but also supporting many of our young people into thinking about what life looks like after high school, what life looks like after middle school, and many of the realms, and just helping them develop their leadership and develop their voices. And I think something that has been helpful for me within this time is definitely the support within the teamwork that I have and the team that I get to serve alongside, as well as the young people themselves. So definitely excited to be here today and grateful for the opportunity to both be in contribution and both to receive. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brittany. All right, we're going to go to Selena.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Selena Mancina. I'm the Managing Director of Business Development and Operations at Strategic Community Partners. So I work alongside Alyssa. I've been at SCP since January full-time, and I was a consultant for about 7 months before that. Before I joined the SCP team, I was a VP of operations at a technology education company located here in Detroit. I was there for close to 6 years. So from inception to scale to where the business is today, which is a couple different locations across the state of Michigan. So mainly my role is to work on internal operations, things like hiring, onboarding, process building, systems building, but also working on biz dev with our partners across the country, and then working on partner work. So some of the work I'm doing right now is with Teach for America. I'm really helping them build their teacher network here in Detroit, which is so important right now given the state of things. And also working with a school in DC, building out their systems and their processes as they begin to not only hire teachers and educators for their schools, but as they begin to receive students for the upcoming school year. So I'm also really excited to be alongside the panelists and kind of speak to, whatever questions you all may have. And then I'm definitely open to connecting afterwards as well. Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Alyssa. Hey, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm super excited to join all of you today. So I am a native Detroiter, and I lead a firm called Raymond Whitaker Design, and we're a consulting firm committed to equity-centered leadership and organizational development. In a nutshell, we help organizations, schools, nonprofits, districts, and individuals problem solve, and we do that through strategic planning, executive coaching, program design, and facilitation. So my background, I mentioned that I'm a Detroiter with deep roots in the South. Shout out to New Orleans and Camden, South Carolina. I started off in education as a teacher and later a school leader. Then I moved into systems work around public policy and doing some pipeline development there, and then moved into the philanthropic sector. And when I launched Raymond Whitaker, I was able to bring all those insights, relationships, tools into my work to help organizations maximize their impact.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to wrap it up with Maddie.
Hi guys, I am Maddie Niebauer, and about 4 years ago, I founded a company called vChief, and we are a virtual chief of staff service. So we help leaders and executives who are overwhelmed and busy and have too much on their plate, and we help take things off their plate so that they can really focus where they can have the most impact. We do things like strategic planning, project management, communications, operations. Sometimes we do a little bit of hiring or building a budget, sort of a kitchen sink type of role, which really is what the chief of staff role often is, playing that right-hand partner to a leader so that they can really be as efficient and effective of a leader as possible. Before founding vChief, I was a chief of staff myself at Teach for America for many years. And I, in that role, was working remotely. So I started working remotely over 10 years ago. And one of my favorite things about working remotely is that you can do it from anywhere. So as you can see, I am somewhere fun and exciting today. Our family decided that we could socially distance just as well in our RV as we could at home in Wisconsin. So we drove out to Utah and are exploring some parks here. So I'm excited to be with you all today and just share some of the things I've learned over the past 10 years of working remotely.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Maddie. And thank you for everyone. See that beautiful mountain range behind her. After COVID, I am going to Utah to visit. All right, so let's hop into our questions. So first question is working remotely a new way of life for you? So we heard some of the panelists share that they've already been working remote, or previously they worked with you in school or worked with partners. So if it is a new way of life for you, what has been the most drastic shift? And if it's not, what are your top tips to be productive, healthy, and happy? And it's for whoever wants to kick it off.
I vote Maddie goes first.
I'll start. As we all know, I've been doing this a long time, but this feels really different. Like, this does not feel like remote work. And I don't mean being in Utah, but being at home with the kids and the husband and all the things, right? And everybody else being at home and everybody learning this new way. And so I think it's just been really interesting to see how that change has been received in different organizations. Some companies really shifted very easily and very well and operated in many virtual ways before, and others are really struggling. And one of the things that I've thought has been a little bit off-putting, to be honest, is how many companies or how many articles I'm reading about sort of keeping tabs on or having surveillance of your employees and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. Because honestly, like, the whole point of hiring people that you believe in is trusting them to get the work done, right? And not feeling like, oh, I have to double check on everything they're doing because I can't just walk by their desk. So I just think it's a really interesting and different dynamic, but I do hope that what we come away with is knowing that virtual work works.
Yeah. I echo a lot of Maddie's sentiments. I've been working remotely probably for about the last 6 or 7 years. And one of the things I love about working remotely, of course, is the flexibility, but just being able to have agency over time and space in some new ways. If you need to work from the comfort of your bed with a nice virtual background, you can do that. If you need to step outside on your porch with a mask, of course, you can do that. I think one of the things that's different in this season right now, outside of the obvious, is that how circumstances have given us space to be more self-aware, probably than ever before. And I think it's in that self-awareness that you can develop really, really strong systems for helping yourself to maximize your work efforts. For instance, if you know that mornings are when you get your best work done, then you might want to plan to schedule some of your silent or independent work time, or if you know that you're sharpest in the morning, then those tough meetings, you might want to schedule that then. And so I think that self-awareness coupled with the ways we're able to like move and navigate and negotiate time and space, can create some great outputs. It's amazing what you can do with a rested mind.
Yeah, I would agree. And, luckily at SEP, we had some really strong systems in place. So it made the transition easier than some of the other companies I saw make the transition, using things like Asana and Slack, and already having video hangout capability was really helpful. But I would echo kind of what Maddie said. And like, I have seen some businesses really not handle things well in terms of just checking in on their employees. Like, I have friends that have like newborns at home and they're trying to do a 40-hour-a-week job and their employers are just not being flexible. It's just totally not realistic. And I think something that we're going to see is after this is, fingers crossed, all said and done, a lot of employees are going to kind of look at their employers and kind of say, like, how did you react to this? How did you help me? How did you support me as an employee? And I think we're going to see people kind of shift in terms of like where they work and, how they support their business and the time and effort and energy they put into their work based on how their employers and their managers and the people around them kind of supported them and reacted to this.
Definitely echo a lot of what's been shared. Oh, yeah. So our organization has existed in New York for the last 25 years, and this is the first time we have ever gone remote. And so we've been working virtually now for the last 10 weeks. And it has definitely been a learning process for our organization and a learning curve. But what has been so crucial for us is how do we build and continue to maintain consistent communication around our entire organization, our staff, and our young people. So noting that in a lot of the education sectors here in the city, computers weren't getting out quick to students. How do we get the tech needs of all of our staff met, but also how do we think about the ways in which maybe it actually is possible to do some of our work remotely. It's an idea that we have never really explored before, and this time is showing us that it is possible. And it's allowing us to explore new layers of our leadership, but also new layers of how we build community among staff. And so something that has been really powerful within our office is building spaces that, and rethinking the idea of time, but using time to think about how we build community among staff. So now we have time for weekly yoga sessions that are staff-led, weekly meditation spaces, but also we do weekly staff lunches, which is something that would never exist before. And it's really just a time to connect and be in connection with each other that is allowing for us to really take a hard look at, are all the meetings that we consistently have week in and week out so necessary? Are many of the spaces that we've been really claiming and holding on to as important as we need to have them be? So it's allowing us to really negotiate through not only effectiveness, but really taking a hard look at the time that we have set aside for different things.
Yeah, I won't, heard some great things. I'll try not to repeat what you all said, but one thing I want to emphasize is, well, two things. One, I definitely appreciate just the blessing of being able to work remotely in the past and currently right now. And I would say for the organization that I mentioned that I worked with for about 4 years was an education organization. So we were working with students who were going to school, and we worked with a number of different districts, hundreds of students, and I think like 30 or so different schools. So a lot of our staff that had the heaviest interaction with those students would be working remotely. You can't sit in an office, for 8 hours a day and also provide hands-on support for students. It was just impossible. So we had a culture of working remotely. So that second thing I wanted to stress, what kept us together was we set aside, we would have retreats just to set our goals, set our vision, to make sure that we were all on the same page about what our outcomes needed to be, what our expectations were. So that we didn't have to, police each other, but when we did come together, it was a check-in on how's our strategy going and is it working or not. So yeah, so I appreciate being able to work remotely, and I would say that it's not new. What is new is working from home. So I like to be in coffee shops, and I really love to change up my environment. In terms of remote working, now solely working from home is very new to me. It was probably my least favorite place to work from, so I am adjusting to that.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, we're going to go into the next question. And this is going to be directed towards first Maddie, as someone who is a OG to say, from working from home and working from home with kids. And we're going to ask you again, as well, as you worked remote before, but now you're working at home, which you shared that wasn't your favorite place to work. So how have you minimized distractions while working from home? So let's start with Maddie, with your wisdom from being in this for a while.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say in this moment, while everyone else is home too, is finding a private space is absolutely critical. Even, and I know there are people who are working from like New York City apartments with roommates or kids or whatever, and that's hard, right? But even if that means like sitting in the bathroom or the walk-in closet or somewhere that like you can be alone when you need to be, I think the reality is it's really hard with all these extra distractions, right? The other thing I'll say is there's some distractions that are always there, right? Even in this non-COVID time. So for example, the internet can be distracting for all of us. I think there's always things that are interesting and shiny new things. And notifications are some of the worst things that pull your attention away from what you're doing. I actually like to put my computer in airplane mode when I can. I find that some of my most productive times working have been on an actual airplane when I wasn't connected to the internet. So just totally disconnecting so that I can dive deep into whatever project that I'm doing really allows me to stay focused. The other thing that I do is I only take calls 2 to 3 days a week, and I only do meetings 2 to 3 days a week. For me, that's really important so that I can have really laser focused time to build my business. And it also means that on the days that I do have calls, I try to keep them generally all together in one place or in a few hours so that I can sort of pound through those and then be able to take time later to, have that really focused deep work, and using things like time blocking on your calendar to say, these are the things that are important for me. Yeah.
Thank you. And I didn't even think about disconnecting while working from home, right? Like right now is the Wi-Fi central. Like, if my Wi-Fi go out, I'm done. So that is a great insight. Adam, how about you?
Yeah. So I want to echo that, like trying to find a space, and I know everyone's space is different. But even working with youth, I would always say, like, if you have a study space, make sure you dedicate that to studying, which is probably why working from specifically home has been very tough for me, because I see like, okay, I can work at a coffee shop, I can work at the office, I can work at the park. But when I come home, that's reserved for not doing work. So having to transform that was really tough. But yeah, just having a designated space. And I'm also a person who loves to change up my environment. So I've been trying to do that at home. So, I mean, even though it's a small apartment, if I'm going for from the kitchen table to my work desk or something like that, or from the bedroom to, I don't know, the stairwell, but trying to find places where I can change up my environment, so to speak, even though I really can't change up my environment. But also designating places where I'm still saying I'm not doing any work in this space. This is a this is a safe space away from work. So having that, and then in terms of minimizing the distractions, usually, social media is there. That doesn't distract me, but I do have other distractions. I try to schedule those distractions. So I think distractions become more of a distraction when you're like trying to avoid it. But if I know that, hey, I might want to get a game of chess in, or I might want to look at, a couple of YouTube videos, just scheduling that into my time. So it's not like when it happens, like, oh, I just lost 3 hours of my day. It's all right. I put that on that timer, and just like, Maddie was saying, just if I block that time off, then I'm less likely to feel, because I think the feelings of, oh, I just wasted time is really what gets us about those distractions. But I think if we schedule those in, we can better manage the distractions, because distractions can happen if you're not working from home or not working remotely. So yeah, I would say acknowledging and managing them.
That great answer. That reminds me of the Palmero method. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but where you time yourself to work like 30 minutes and then you take 15 off and so on and so forth. I learned it in college and grad school trying to hammer out papers, but I found it effective working from home as well. Thanks, Adam. All right. So next question is for Selena and Elizabeth. So what's your work style right now? So do you have a hard routine, 9 to 5? Are you flexing in and out? What does it look like for you all?
I think for me, so I have a family and we all have our designated work areas that we stay in for most of the day. Mondays and Fridays, I try not to schedule calls and meetings. Those are windows for me to do my individual work, for me to dream, for me to vision set, for me to plan, for the next 8 months. In the middle of the week is when I do like my heaviest lifting there. In the mornings, I tend to be freshest, so I save my toughest calls for the morning. I never schedule any calls until I've had at least 1 to 2 hours to do some processing. That works for me. I know that's not like possible for everyone. I've been blessed to be able to make that work. When I was in situations when I couldn't make that work, sometimes having a check-in with a manager can make the world a difference, because at the end of the day, it's all about the impact and being able to have the environment the environment that you need to have that impact. Other things, I break for lunch somewhere between 11 and 1, depending on when I get hungry and how well I did with food prep the night before. And I have a set end time, like I stop work at a certain time every day. Outside of special circumstances. And when I'm doing that planning that I mentioned on Monday and Friday, that's when I usually determine what that time is going to be.
Great. Selena, what does your day look like?
So I've always been a pretty flexible person with my schedule. So I like to kind of weave in and out. During quarantine, luckily our team has been like very understanding and like very flexible in terms of like giving everybody time to kind of do what makes them happy. So I definitely go on lots of walks with my dog. If it's a nice day in the city, I'll go on a bike ride. So I'm big on like time blocking. So I might put like an hour hold on my calendar so I'm able to do that. I will definitely do early meetings if someone needs me to, but I've always been like, I need like a solid 30 minutes, like after I'm like ready for the day to like get settled into the day. So I still do my like morning routine. So like I get up, I shower, I get dressed, I make my breakfast. So I know some people are kind of comfortable kind of like, working, in their pajamas, which is like totally fine. And I dig it, but like, I like to like get dressed and get ready. It just kind of helps me like distinguish like from, again, kind of like what Adam was saying, like the work time from the home time. It helps me distinguish that. And then I do a lot of meetings, kind of like what Elizabeth was saying, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then kind of Mondays and Fridays are my work days. Something at Strategic Community Partners that we've always done is Summer Fridays. So we're actually going to be getting Summer Fridays next Friday, and we've actually extended that to the whole day versus a half day. We can't really go anywhere, but hopefully it'll be nice in the city for a little while this summer, and we can kind of get outside and go on walks and spend time with our family as much as we can as possible. So we're really trying to think about, obviously there's work that needs to be done still, and there's projects still in motion, and like partners still expect results, but we also really, really, really right now more than ever are balancing like how can we help our team's mental health? How can we like really promote their self-care and give them what they need during this time? So if it's a little extra time on their own on Fridays, we're happy to do that right now.
Perfect. You actually helped me go into our next question. So this is gonna be, I'm gonna ask Brittany and Adam, as you all both work with youth. And I know it's like a very big transition from working from home and working remotely while working with youth. So how have you all been supporting your team? So Adam, as the founder of your organization, and Brittany, as a pillar of your organization, how are you supporting your team and your coworkers during this time?
Well, I'll go first because if I had to guess, I think my team is a lot smaller. So this past year was like our pilot year, which got unfortunately interrupted. But yeah, so I had a small team of interns. It was mostly me doing most of the work. So it was easy to support coworkers because it was pretty small. And so yeah, so I'll speak more to the engagement with the student side. So it was really tough at first, just knowing that they did have their own schoolwork to deal with, and they were adjusting to that environment too. So I wanted to give them some time to be able to make that adjustment. So really what the support looked like at first was making sure that they had everything they needed to be successful in their virtual classroom. So seeing what those challenges were, what some strengths were, what resources they continue to need. And so that's where I put my focus on. So yes, I would love for them to continue writing poetry and continue engaging in the way that we did, but I wanted to make sure that those more salient needs were met as well. And so once that happened, I transitioned that into because while we were meeting in person, they would always say like, this is a great break from school. Like they still felt like they were working on projects and doing work, so to speak. But it was in a more relaxing way, in a way that allowed them to be more creative. So again, in their virtual environment, I transitioned that into how I could best support them around the goals of the program as well. So tailoring our approach to what struggles they may be having and struggles they may be facing in their new virtual environment. Now, once I figured out all the tools and resources they already had available and the ones that they needed, then I could use those tools so we could have, Zoom sessions, and I could use, Google Docs and everything. So I got a couple of them set up on email. Some of the middle schoolers who didn't have accounts yet, so getting them set up and almost like just teaching them how to use that platform as well. And they're quicker than we are, but teaching them how to use that platform and maximize that, not just in our program, but in the work that they were doing in their schools.
Yeah, and I can speak more to supporting staff. So something that has been really crucial, I think, in every space that we have held across our organization is taking time to remember to breathe, and giving that humility and taking a moment for folks to feel like they have grace. And so also remembering that it's okay to be in connection and to laugh with each other too. I think sometimes when we're stuck working at home, we get very siloed into these ideas. If I have to constantly be productive, and if I'm not being productive 24/7, then all these thoughts that come up. So how do we also take a moment to pause in meetings, to have a fun icebreaker, and to just reconnect with each other? But also noting that check-ins is something that is really huge among our team and our organization. So really genuinely checking in with folks around, how are you doing? How is today? How are you actually feeling? And what do you need? How can you be supported? But also in the same fold, recognizing that sometimes folks get tired of answering those questions too. So how do you provide the space to answer, but how do you also provide space for folks to feel like, actually today I don't want to answer those questions, I appreciate it, but I need a moment back. So remembering that we can still connect with people and still maintain really beautiful foundational relationships, but also just have grace for one another as well. And so we've also done a number of really fun things on staff, in terms of, like I had mentioned earlier, some yoga and virtual lunches. I also have a ton of resources if folks want to connect afterwards for different games that we've played, and just some lighthearted spaces and ways that we've been able to just also have fun.
That sounds great. Selena, I think we need to start doing yoga as well, take that method. All right, so we're going to go to our last question, and it's going to be for everyone. So in 60 seconds, what is your number one if somebody can only do one thing, what's your number one recommendation for making working from home work for you? Let's start with Maddie.
I think that, this is a space for you to own your own time, right? People can't just be popping by your desk. So you should really figure out the systems that work for you to stay focused. And honestly, I think the more meetings you can get off your schedule, the better. And I think it's a great time to really push your team on that too. Like if there's a meeting where you're all just checking in and telling each other what's happened, that is not a useful use of time. It's just not. I mean, yes, it's important to connect with people and blah, 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 but like save the meeting time for when you're making decisions collectively, where you need to have that conversation where it's not just like, this is what I did this week. No, send that in an email. Like take the time that you have, especially when there's like 87 distractions and not everybody can work 40 hours a week, right? Let's get rid of the junk and stay focused, laser focused on what you need to accomplish, thinking about like your big rocks for the week and like, what am I going to get done this week, and getting rid of the garbage that you don't need.
Perfect. Selena.
My initial thought, because my back hurts, is get a good chair. I actually did go to my office and literally load up my car with my chair, but I feel like I'm sitting more than I would normally in the office, because usually I'm like getting up, like Maddie said, like walking around and chatting with people at the desk, or like going to the kitchen and grabbing coffee. So a good chair, a good station. So like I spent probably $30 on like a wireless keyboard, a wireless mouse, a laptop stand. I think that makes a huge difference of just kind of having your space at home. And then I totally agree, kind of like auditing your calendar and being like, what's not needed, what is needed, because even though we are home, I will say I'm more exhausted after a day of video calls than I was in the office of just in-person meetings, which is kind of silly. And me and our CEO, Chanel, were like texting yesterday or the day before, like, how is that even possible? And it's a real thing. There's like, I've read articles at this point. So I would say like really figure out what's needed, what's not needed, use other virtual communication tools. Slack, there are free options. Asana, there are free options. Really come prepared to meetings with agendas, making sure your team members are up to speed on what you expect from them from meetings, while putting like an agenda in the calendar description, and really just trying to make everyone's time, as valuable as possible, because people have kids at home, partners, roommates, pets, they have other things going on.
Thanks, Selena. Elizabeth.
So, this is something that I think is overlooked in a lot of homes. And so this tip is for people who live with other people, whether they're grown-ups or little people. Communicate your work needs and your meeting needs with the people who are around you. If you shared office space with someone before, you would talk about things like who's gonna clean up the lunchroom, maybe, right? Or who's got a loud call coming up, who's gonna have the conference room, things like that. Like communicate your needs. For small children, if you need to have like a red, yellow, and green sign, like when you can come talk, about a need, do that. If you're with your significant other or with a roommate or something like that, like make sure that you talk ahead of time about how you're going to be sharing space. And that might change from week to week. Like have a weekly check-in, communicate any changes in the same way that you would with any colleagues, and extend grace. This is new for so many people. It might be new for you. It might be new for the people or person that you're living with. Just be gentle with yourself and with each other.
Be gentle with yourself and each other. Yes. Adam Lane, what's your thoughts?
I want to tap into and extend on what Elizabeth just said with that extend grace. I would say extend grace to yourself. Definitely celebrate those wins. I don't want to call them small wins, but celebrate, at the end of the day, whenever that is for you, to say, yeah, I got a lot done today. I think we can take for granted how much work we're actually doing when we're working from home, because we're like, oh yeah, you got a lot done, but you didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't have to, put on clothes. You didn't have to drive through traffic. And so we kind of diminish the work that we've done and the things that we've accomplished Whereas if we didn't accomplish something or something didn't go well, we tend to magnify that. And so even though there might be one or two things that didn't go well compared to 20 that did go well, we'll tend to harp on the stuff that didn't go well. So definitely extend those, extend grace to yourself, celebrate those small wins. If you had one video call where your fur baby didn't get into the video, that might be a win that you celebrate as well. So that would be my recommendation.
Thanks, Adam. And Brittany, take us on home.
I'm gonna try. I appreciate what everyone has said, and I want to sum up with the idea of, just really being easy on yourself, but remembering that it's okay, that you're gonna be okay, and you're really trying your best. And sometimes trying our best is all we can do, and that every day also looks different. And so if you woke up on Monday feeling really great, and maybe Tuesday you didn't, maybe it felt completely different, and that's really all right. And so how do you take a moment to recognize that your emotions might be shaping and evolving and changing on a day-to-day, and especially as many of us are in roles where we're supporting a lot of other people, remembering that it's okay for us to take a moment to also nurture ourselves too. So be sure that you're drinking water, be sure that you're eating on the daily, having somebody to connect with that maybe is your person to say, did you eat lunch today? I haven't yet, but I need to stop and do it. Also to create that level of accountability for care for yourself. So know who you can tap into, and know who can also hold you to the spaces that you want others to hold themselves to as well.
Thank you. So we're gonna head into the Q&A. So I've already seen in the chat, people have been asking questions, panelists have been answering one off, which has been so great. Are there any other questions that the audience have that they'd like the panelists to answer? I'll also scroll through the chat box to see if anything hasn't been answered as well. I see right now people are talking about how to capture the drive-by conversations. So panelists, anyone want to jump in?
I saw a comment in here that I liked about starting like a group chat or a Slack channel around similar interests. So I know I was texting Alyssa and Jenna last week about the season finale of Little Fires Everywhere on Hulu. So that's very, very drive-by-esque, not work related at all. So that's really nice. I dropped something in here. Slack has like a plugin called Donut. It's free. Essentially, it randomly pairs you with somebody every week or every 2 weeks, whatever you set it up as, for a virtual coffee. Anybody that kind of opts in is kind of up for grabs to be connected with you. If you don't have Slack, there are non-Slack tools that do the same thing. And that could be a great way for you to meet other people at your org if you are larger and you don't know everybody that well, or even if you are at a smaller company, you just don't know everybody that well. And it's a good way to get to know people and kind of talk about non-work things.
Thanks, Selena. All right, we have a few more questions coming in. So do you all think that working remotely will be more popular after this period?
I do. I absolutely do. As I said when we started, I think there's a real question of that, like, people think that this is what remote work is when everybody else is home, because it's really not. But I think what people will see is some of the benefits and the added flexibility, and they'll be able to see the people on their team that they can trust them to produce the results that they expect. And I think, you know, employers who have an eye towards strong results and getting the best talent, like, it's really the only way to operate in my mind. Like, that's why I started a virtual company, because the best talent is all over. And yeah, not every company or organization can do that because they do things in person with students, right? Like, that doesn't always work for everyone, but I do think people will see the benefits that it brings.
Perfect answer. I agree. But, I see Elizabeth.
I was gonna say too that I think I was having this conversation yesterday. I think it'll definitely be more popular, but I think the more important thing is I think it'll be less stigmatized, because there's always this stigma around, oh, you're working from home, you're not doing anything, or I'm gonna say I'm working from home, but I'm not. But I think as Maddie was saying, as we start to see that this is something that we can do, I think if someone just needs a day where maybe they feel like they don't need to be in the office or they can't be in that space and they request to work from home, there will be less, just less stigma around it and less of a barrier to that being possible.
I think one shift that is going to happen, particularly with organizations that maybe, how can I say this? I don't want to say stuck in the Stone Ages, that sounds really bad, but for organizations that are less adept around some of the tech advances that we're getting used to now, folks will see the necessity. I think a lot of as others have said, a lot of the misconceptions around what remote work actually is will shift because people will see the impact that folks are having. And so when someone needs to like attend a recital and maybe can't drive 2 hours or drive an hour for that meeting, but needs to work remotely for the day, that maybe there'll be some policies to address it. And I think also someone made a note around organizations like offering Wi-Fi access and internet and software, different things like that. I think that we'll see that become more part of policy. Organizations are going to have a lot of savings. And so some of those savings can be used to help support people building really efficient home offices.
Yeah, something it's important, and if your manager or team members haven't asked, is kind of doing a tech check of like, what do you have access to, what do you not have access to? Again, I mentioned things like a mouse and a keyboard. It makes a big difference if you're working from home months on end with no end in sight versus just typing on a laptop. A lot of people do work where they need a second monitor. Do you need that second monitor to do things like presentations or graphic work? So kind of like doing that like informal tech check, and then if you do have a need, bringing it to your manager or whomever is responsible for that and coming with ideas. Like I did the research, I found this desktop for X amount of dollars on Amazon. Is this something I can purchase? And kind of like really raising your voice on what you need to be successful.
And as an employer, it would be crazy not to get these things. I mean, if you think about like the headcount costs that you pay for people, like buying them a chair for a couple $100, like it's just dumb. Like just pay for it.
Maddie, you just transitioned to another question we have. So what are your organizations doing to support employees? So in terms of offering internet, cell phone, ergonomic tools, chairs. So you said you're buying a chair, right?
I just think that it makes sense, right? Yeah.
That was something in our organization within the first week. We were doing needs assessments of everyone on staff when we shifted to a virtual space to figure out, now that we're moving, how do we support you in being successful, but also support in lowering some of the anxiety that also comes with making that shift. So all the tech needs, but also checking in with you to see how you're feeling about it. How can we support in making that schedule adjustment? How we can support in, talking more about the work-life balance. So beyond just all the physical needs, but also how are you doing on the individual level, and how can we check in around that? Additionally, that was something we did for our young people to also ensure that as schools were making the quick shift to a virtual space, we were giving them all the tech needs that they had on their end too, as many young people are preparing for graduation or have many key exams on the line, that as we are getting ourselves ready, we're also supporting our young people. So I'm gracious and very much in gratitude that we are able to do that.
All right. And for our last question, which you all have been already kind of answering in the chat, but I just wanted to see if any of the panelists had any last words on it. Do you all recommend any tech, any programs, such as Zoom, processes, things like that, to the attendees? So we already talked about Slack, we already talked about Zoom. I think Google Hangout is pretty cool. Anything else cool and new that we should share?
People have mentioned, Asana, other project management systems that where teams can work collaboratively, I think are really great. So whether that's Asana or Basecamp or Trello or, there's a lot of different ones out there, but it really allows for collaboration, and even just Google Docs, right? Like just to be able to change things in real time together is helpful.
Yeah. One thing I want to share, I haven't heard it mentioned yet, but really making remote work accessible across all demographic groups, including age groups. You know, there are some folks who didn't grow up using computers in school, computers at work. This is all very, very new. It can be intimidating. It can cause anxiety. And so even thinking about ways to use traditional things like, you know, is there a way to use like email more efficiently? Is there a way to do X, Y, or Z? Or even polling folks like on staff to see if the people have some creative and innovative ways to use tools that may not cost money or may not require someone to quickly learn you know, a whole new set of skills while currently managing the regular workload and offering grace like while people are, you know, learning the things they need to.
I dropped a few random things in the Slack channel, but you don't know you need it until you do, and then it's quarantine. So there are like virtual like notaries that you can get things done. We've had to do that a couple times. Having like an e-signature system, especially if you're onboarding employees or you're onboarding clients. I know it may seem like common sense, but I have worked with clients who didn't have an e-signature platform, and it can make it really difficult. If your organization doesn't have an HRIS system, that's like a little bit more of a lift to set up, but it can be really, really beneficial, especially if your company is going to be onboarding employees, which a lot of companies still are, and that can be really helpful.
I love chart paper and sticky notes, and an organization that I work with uses a platform called Miro, and I don't know what the subscription costs are, and it's Miro, and I think there's another program like it called Mural or something like that. I'll try to find it in a couple seconds and post it in. But Miro allows you to do like sticky notes. It's like a collaborative tool, and it's not really project management, so to speak. But like if you have, you should use the chart paper stickies to brainstorm and, you know, work things out that way. It allows you to continue to do that while you are on a video call or something. And it also keeps people engaged. So for those who might not be more vocal, but can put a sticky there and they might not want to post something in the chat, Miro has been very good for that.
Also thinking about GroupMe, which is really helpful for communication between staff, as you can do different polls, you can drop different audio, it can be a space for work, but it can also be a space for fun. There's just a lot of other options you wouldn't get via just regular texting with folks.
Gotcha. Well, thank you all. I would like to thank my wonderful panel for being here and giving such great nuggets, all this wisdom, thought, collaboration on how to work from home. I'd also like to thank the audience for coming and learning and really contributing. Everyone in the chat, we're doing so great, is collaborating and giving suggestions for each other. Before we close on out, I just want to give you all a few ways that you can continue engaging. So subscribe to our newsletter at Strategic Community Partners. You can follow us on social media. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email. So you'll have a recap of this panel as well as a video recording. In addition, you'll have some tangibles that you can use for working from home. And join our next webinar. So our final webinar will be June 17th, and it is on engaging with community beyond COVID-19. So you'll hear from local organizations such as Balmer Group and United Way of Southeastern Michigan, as well as national voices from We Power STL and the Obama Foundation. And if you stay on after I close, it'll direct you right to the registration page. So again, thank you all for joining. So happy to see everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.